Okay, so we have this week the man. Now when the Torah talks about the man, it describes it in a number of different ways. There are a number of psukim that talk about the man. In one place it talks about the man and it says that when the dew fell upon the camp, dew was in like D-E-W, not J-E-W, the dew, right? It's that moisture that is on the ground. Yeah, the dew, sorry. When the dew would come down, the man would come down and rest upon the dew. And then it actually says that there would then be like a second layer of dew on top, and the man was protected in between these two layers. And that's actually why on Shabbos it's customary, we cover the challah when we make Kiddush. And one of the reasons is because we're doing the blessings out of order, but another reason is, and this is not just having a cover on top, but it's customary to have something underneath the challah also. So it's not just on the table, it should be on something. Very often it's just on a cutting board, so that works. But there should be something underneath the challah and above the challah to represent the fact that the man had these two layers of dew protecting it, one beneath and one above. So it says when the dew would come down in the camp, the man would come down on it. But then it also talks about the man. It says that, when in the morning they would go out of the camp to get the man. And then it also talks about them traveling far. They would journey to get the man. And if something is coming down and landing in the camp right outside the opening of your tent, why do you have to go out of the camp and why do you have to journey? So the Gemara discusses this and says that it's actually, the Pasuk describes it in multiple different ways intentionally to let us know that not everybody had the same experience. Some people, the most righteous, the people who were worthy of it, had the man land right at the opening of their tent. They would get up in the morning, they would open the flap of their tent, and the man was right there sitting waiting for them. Then there were other people who, they weren't quite worthy of such an efficient delivery, and they would have to go out of the camp and get them on from just outside. And then the people who were worthy of having to travel even further would have to actually go all the way out to get them on. So each person's delivery of man arrived in a place that was appropriate for where they were at in their journey spiritually, what they were, let's say, worthy of behaviorally. And there's something else that the Gemara also tells us based on the different words, the different verbs that the Torah uses, or verbs and nouns, it's a combination, but some people got the man like ready to eat. Some people got it like kind of half ready and they had to finish preparing it, and some people got it completely unprepared and they had to prepare it and work on it to make it edible. On their behavior. Let's say some of the words that could be used is tzaddik, beinoni, and rasha. If someone is, very righteous, very committed, really working on that, on top of their game spiritually, it would be ready to eat and it would be right outside the door. And then the opposite end of the spectrum it was very unprepared, it required a lot of work, and they had to really go on a journey to get it. And then in between, some people, they had to go a little bit to get it and do a bit of preparation.
So they got rewarded physically?
Yeah. So this is the man that we're talking about, right? Man is what? It's a source of nutrition, source of nutrients. It's food. There are some other things that we know about the man. Some of which include the fact, we know about the taste and the experience, the culinary experience, the sensory experience of eating it, but also the man didn't have any waste. It was 100% nutrition, which means the entire thing was absorbed and there was no waste that needed to be gotten rid of. So the whole thing got absorbed, and when it comes to this, there's no variation across people. Everybody, it doesn't say some people got pure nutrition and some people had waste. No. Everybody got pure nutrition from the man. And there are like special things that the Torah tells us, that the Gemara, that the Chazal tell us about eating the man. It had eating the man because it was It was food. In a sense, it was something that they could ingest, they could eat, and it would provide all the physical nutrition that their body needed. The calories, the macronutrients, the micronutrients, everything that they needed, that their bodies needed, they got from the man. But at the end of the day, it wasn't a physical food that grew from the ground. It didn't come from the earth. It was delivered by Hashem. So it was almost like this, not like, it was a divine source of nutrition for the body. It was divine nourishment for the physical body. And so that had a profound impact on them all the way, not just on their souls, but on their bodies. Their bodies were affected as a result, and there are things that the Gemara tells us that happened only. The Torah was given to those who ate the man. There are things, about the man. There are things about that generation of people who ate the man, ways in which they were different and special because they ate man and their bodies were physically, people say you are what you eat. It's true. It's literally true. To illustrate it the most clearly, because it's a very clear way of visualizing it, let's say that a baby is born at 40 weeks and the baby weighs 7 pounds, let's say 8 pounds, whatever it is. Pick a number, let's say 7 pounds. One of the things that is monitored generally relatively closely to make sure that a baby is doing well is their progress, how much weight they're gaining. Right? If a baby is like continuing through time and not gaining weight, which they should be, then something's wrong somewhere. Generally, babies gain weight, and the rate at which they gain weight as a percentage of their body is incredible. Let's say a baby starts out at 7 pounds, and however long, a few months later, it's 10 pounds. There are now 3 additional pounds of baby. This baby used to be 7 pounds, and that same baby's same body is now 10 pounds. There's 3 more pounds of tissue in this body. Where did that 3 pounds of body of baby come from? There's additional bone, there's additional muscle, there's additional tendons, additional ligaments, additional blood, additional skin, additional lung, additional heart, additional everything, additional brain matter. Where did all of that come from? It was literally built out of molecules that the baby got from what it ate. The baby, ideally, when it's possible, the baby nurses. The baby's drinking milk. That milk has nutrients in it. The baby's body absorbs nutrients from the milk. And then the body uses those nutrients, will take molecules, protein molecules and fat molecules, etc., from that food and use it to build additional body tissue, to build new body. Right? So all of that additional mass, where did it come from? It came from the food. So, and the same is true for us. It's true for us today. Our bodies are constantly like, the human body is not static. We are shedding cells every second. We are shedding enormous numbers of cells. Cells are turning over, cells are getting recycled, new cells are being produced. Where is all of that new tissue coming from? The materials that our body needs to do that, some of it is recycled. The body breaks down parts and reuses them, but the rest of it comes from the food that we eat. So when they say you are what you eat, it's literally true. Our bodies are constructed from the foods that we ingest. And when you think about it like that, it maybe can increase our appreciation and motivation for the value of eating good, quality, nutritious food. Our bodies are literally made out of what we eat. And also our body, the materials our body has to work with are made out of what we eat. Right? If you have to make a fire in a fireplace and there's some kinds of wood, if you put in proper dry wood or you put in wood that hasn't dried yet, or you put in, one's going to burn clean and the other one's going to fill the whole house up with smoke. Some kinds of wood are going to burn clean and efficient, some are going to be very inefficient, some are going to not leave much of a smell, some are going to make the house smell horrendous, right? different nutrients, different sources of fuel also produce different effects. So what we eat makes a big difference to our health and quality of life. So the people in this generation, they also were what they ate. For those 40 years that they were in the desert, their bodies were constructed from divine materials that literally were delivered from heaven every day. It's a matter of time before basically this is this strange thing where we're the same person throughout the course of our lives, more or less. In certain ways, we're the same person. But we can be actually, over the course of time, there could be barely any of us that's actually the same as it was before, because so much of us has been recycled and turned over.
I don't know if it's true, but our cells shed all the time, that every 7 years you're a different person.
Could be. I don't know the numbers. It could be something like that. Excuse me. So their bodies were literally constructed from divine matter. And that had an impact on all of them. And everybody who ate them on ended up having a very deep, let's say, spiritual development, evolution, growth, etc., because of the fact that their bodies were constructed from divine matter. Now, this isn't technically officially part of the material, but I want to focus on here for a second because there's a very beautiful lesson here. Right? We know that all of them were inevitably impacted by the man, and all of them had this spiritual development, growth, awakening, return, etc., as a result of eating the man. That didn't happen in one day, right? If that happened in one day, then by the second day, everyone would have got the man delivered to their door. They didn't. That doesn't mean that the man didn't really have an effect on them. It's just that the reality across every aspect of life, the reality of true, meaningful, long-term, deep, powerful growth and change is that it happens slowly over time, always without exception. That doesn't mean that there can't be real moments. There could be moments where there are big shifts that happen, but there is no big shift in life that without continued investment over time to integrate and to continue growing is going to have a long-term impact. A person can have a very real, very big shift that happens in a moment, but those kind of shifts, they will not have a long-term impact unless they are followed up, thank you very much, with long-term consistent work, integration, continued effort, continued development. Then we take everything that happened in that moment with us and really get the full impact of it. So yes, there is such a thing as like a momentary huge event or shift that happens. I'm not saying there's no such thing as that can't be, or that can't be real. It can be. But the only time that's going to pay off in the long term is if it's within the context of long-term work, progress, change. And here we're talking about man. We're talking about divine food that their bodies were ingesting. They were ingesting every day, and their bodies were being constructed from and running off of that fuel. And it was guaranteed that they were all going to have this outcome at the end. This teshuvah, this return. But it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen over time. Everything real happens over time. This gave them support and direction and push and kept them on track and supported them and nurtured them in that pathway. But it's still a pathway, it's still a journey. There are no exceptions to the fact that real growth and development is a long-term game, it's a journey, and it takes time. Let's take the equivalent when it comes to physical nutrition and on the physical health of the body. I mean, there are so many reasons and angles to, the slow and steady and how and why that makes it's superior in basically every way. and people want to, very often people want to have a change. I want to lose this amount of weight in this amount of time. The percentage of people that will go on a diet, let's say, or an exercise regime or whatever it is that they want to lose a substantial amount of weight in a very small amount of time, the percentage of people that rebound just as quickly back to where they were and often worse, I believe it's north of 90%, 95, somewhere up there. Almost everybody is going back, and that's because there wasn't growth, there wasn't development. Things like that don't work. If you take a spring and you stretch it out, you let go, it's going to spring back. If we develop over time healthy habits, a healthier relationship with food, let's say, and then healthier habits when it comes to eating and healthier habits when it comes to movement and exercise, etc., and we develop those in a way that's deep and genuine, it takes time to make those changes, and it takes time to see results actually show up, but that approach absolutely can last a lifetime. It's not going to make someone ready for the beach in 6 weeks if they're very not ready for the beach, let's say, figuratively, or not. But it is going to mean that for the rest of their life they're going to feel better. They're going to look better not just for the beach for those 3 weeks and then rebound and maybe end up further away from their goal than they were before they started, but they're going to end up continuing to feel better and better and better and to be happier and happier about the way they look, etc. Progress, real progress, because there are a lot of elements and a lot of things that are happening. Right? Just to illustrate, let's say with the physical body, when a person goes from, let's say, 180 pounds to 130 pounds, a loss of body mass is not the only thing that changes. Physiologically, the physiological functioning of a 130-pound body is very different to the physiological functioning of a 180-pound body. There are a lot of things that shift and adapt, and when that change happens gradually over time, the body can make all of the appropriate changes, and all the things can change together, and everything can develop slowly. The heart rate can adapt slowly. The amount of volume that the heart has to pump can adapt slowly and gradually. And the shifts metabolically and in insulin and all the different things can happen slowly, gradually together. And they can all shift slowly together in a way that everything is matching throughout the process. You just get rid of a whole lot of body mass. The way that the heart is pumping doesn't match the way that the body is. The insulin function is going to take time to adjust. The liver is going to take time to adjust. Everything, the brain is going to take time to adjust. The nervous systems, the bones, the ligaments, everything is going to take time to adjust. And so things are completely out of whack and everything's just going to go back. Right? Real change is complex. There are a lot of pieces and a lot of parts and it's multifaceted. And if we make changes in a way that's fundamental and deep and real, slow and steady really, 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 really wins the race. So, and this is true of every level of development. Any kind of development, growth, healing, whatever it is, it's very natural that we want to just they should have eaten the man. If the man makes them do tshuva, they should eat the man the next day. Everyone should just be and they should all get their man delivered, ready to eat outside the tent. It doesn't work that way. That would be very convenient and efficient, and technology has made us think and feel like convenient and efficient is always better, but it's not real. It's not real. Reality is not convenient and efficient. Reality is deep and complex and beautiful, and it moves slowly. Any kind of work, development, and growth, whether it's the development and growth of towards and doing tshuva from the man that came delivered from heaven every day, or physical, improving our health physically, improving our health emotionally, whatever it is, all of these things are supposed to be. Shifts take time. Shifts are supposed to take time. There's no way around that. And the more we can lean into the fact that the shift needs to take time, the more we're going to be able to do it properly, and the bigger the shift is going to end up being. And it can be a very hard thing because society has wired us so differently today. But the more we can lean in to this is where things are at, let's work on what we're supposed to, what's the right thing to work on now, let me put my effort into that and work on it. And lean into where we are and what we need and do things the right way for where we are, the shift ends up being tremendous. The more we can lean into slow and steady and respecting the reality of the way things are and the reality that things are slow and steady, the bigger the progress and shift is going to end up being. And honestly, the faster it'll end up happening also actually, because we're not spending most of our energy fighting ourselves and fighting where we are and then trying to push ourselves away from where we are. And then part of us is trying to hang on to where we are, and we're spending most of our money most of our time and effort in a boxing match with ourselves. The more we can really lean into where we are and do what we're supposed to do. If I look at someone else, that person is super righteous, that person listens this much Torah a day, and I'm like, you know what? Look at that person, they learn 12 hours of Torah a day. And like, I'm like working really hard at like doing 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening. So you know what? 12 hours a day, yeah. I'm going to stop everything else. I'm just going to sit and learn 12 hours a day. I think we all know how that's going to turn out. It's not going to be pretty in a whole number of ways. And most importantly, perhaps, not most importantly, but most relevantly to the conversation for this person who wants to do that, it's not going to work. You're going to learn a lot less Torah doing that than if you work on, maybe saying, you know what? I'm doing 20 minutes twice a day. I'm going to try to do 20 minutes, 21 minutes, one of those times a day. And then I'm going to do 21 minutes both times a day. And maybe 21 is a bit over the top, maybe 23 or 25. But honestly, like I said, leaning into the slowness and respecting where we are, generally, the more we lean into that, the more progress we make. That was all a side note and a tangent. Kind of. The Rebbe does actually address that in the text, not in those words, but the Rebbe says that everyone was guaranteed to do teshuvah because that's the effect of the man, but it didn't happen overnight. It took time. It took a lifetime. But it was guaranteed because of the man. Now, let's say when it comes to nutrition again, food. Right, we're talking about food, lechem min hashamayim, and contrasting lechem min hashamayim, the bread, the nutrition from heaven, which was the man, from what's the bracha, the blessing that we say when we eat bread? Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, who brings bread out of the earth. There are opinions in the Gemara that say that when they ate the man, they would actually make a bracha of saying, thanking Hashem for the lechem min hashamayim, the bread from the heaven. Now, when it comes to physical bread, physical food, nutrition, not everybody's, there might be foods that are very, very nutritious. And I'm not going to give an example because that's perhaps one of the most contentious. You know, we're going to have the vegans and the carnivores and everybody, every variation in between. So hypothetical, ideally nutritious food. I'm not saying I don't have a personal, very strong position on this. I do, but I'm not going there now. Maybe after we turn off the camera. I'm not going there either. But even if there's a food that is extremely nutritious, there's also such a thing as a person who, because of maybe their dietary history or physiological things in their body, they're not going to be able to get the proper nutrition from that food. They might have an intolerance to it. Maybe they've never eaten that food before and it's so different to what they're used to eating that when they go there, their body's going to, maybe reject the food or in a number of ways take time to get used to it, to adapt. So the fact that a food is very nutritious doesn't mean it can equally nourish everyone. Some part of that might be, arguably, that different people's bodies are genetically predisposed to doing better on different diets. And some of it might also be that a person who is genetically predisposed to doing just as well as someone else on the same diet, but they're coming from such a different place, their body's not going to tolerate that food. Or maybe deep down, their body is designed, predisposed to do well on that diet, but they've developed an intolerance on top of that, and because of the intolerance, they can't get the benefits of the food. Maybe if they could address the intolerance and come back to it, things might be different. So the fact that a food is very nutritious doesn't necessarily mean that everybody can make the most of it. Some people are fortunate to be able to digest and absorb nutrients from good, nutrient-dense, bioavailable foods very efficiently, and some people can't. When it came to the man, whilst on one hand the nature of the man was that the delivery of the man, because it was divine food, was very strongly attuned to the spiritual state of the person, and so if the person's spiritual state warranted that they should get their food delivered right outside the door ready to eat, that's what they got. And if someone's spiritual state warranted that they should have to put in some work to get there and go through a journey to get there, then that's what would happen. One might think that a similar thing would happen in people who were in a, let's say, spiritually less ideal state. Maybe their bodies would also reject some of the food. They wouldn't be able to absorb the nutrients. It's not the case. Everybody got pure nutrition from the man. Nobody had any waste left over from the man. Nobody didn't get sufficient benefit from the man that they wouldn't end up doing teshuvah in the end. No. Everybody did teshuvah. The people who didn't need to do teshuvah didn't need to do teshuvah. So then it wouldn't tell us that the people who ate the man ended up doing teshuvah. It's like only if they were in a really good state, well then they didn't really need that. The whole point of it made sure people did teshuvah is for the people who needed to do teshuvah the most. So the man, and perhaps, I'm literally just thinking this out loud now. I'm not taking this from anywhere. This just occurred to me. Maybe we can reframe it also, because in general, right, Rambam tells us that reward and punishment are fundamental tenets of Jewish faith. Reward and punishment for our behavior is real. We also know that reward and punishment are not, the reward and punishment are natural consequences of our behavior. When we do the things we're supposed to do, we deepen and strengthen our connection to Hashem, and that connection to Hashem is the ultimate reward. And the reward that we receive is not something additional to that, it's just that, let's say, Gan Eden in heaven, all that happens is, when we do what we're supposed to do now, we are deepening and strengthening our connection to Hashem. The reward is being produced in real time. It's just that, imagine that we're missing the Wi-Fi antenna to be able to experience it. We're actually producing the reward already. What happens later is that then the person is able to actually appreciate the connection that they produced before. That connection is the reward. The same is with punishment. Punishment, it is punishment, but it's primarily the cleansing that is necessary. The result of doing things in a way that's not ideal is that there is repair and or cleansing that is necessary. Repair and or cleansing happens to not be very pleasant. So the repair and cleansing happens to also function as a very real natural consequence, a punishment. But it's not something that was created as a punitive measure. It's the natural consequence, it's the natural outcome that happens to be an effective punishment. And along those lines, again, to be clear, I'm thinking out loud, with a degree of speculation here. The people who, let's say, we could look at it as they didn't deserve to have their man land here, they deserved to have to work really hard to get it. Let's make a subtle and minor reframe here, which is that those people needed more of a journey, they needed more work, and there was a journey built into their process of getting them on every day. They had to literally travel and journey to get it. They had to work to produce it. Journeying produces progress. Now, yes, this is physical working, it's not deep inner work, but the whole mindset that they're two completely different things is a fallacy. It's very deep and prevalent, but it's a fallacy. Physical health and physical well-being, mental, emotional well-being, spiritual well-being, I wouldn't say they're on a continuum, but they are inherently intertwined, and you cannot affect one without affecting the other. Improving physical health, improving metabolic health will be one of the most powerful ways to improve mental and emotional health. When a person improves their mental and emotional health, their physical health improves. There are a lot of diagnosable conditions today that have no explanation and nothing anyone can do about it other than give a diagnosis. And, I'm not going to say anything too definitive other than there are a lot of people who end up with these sorts of diagnoses, and then they start to work on healing themselves inside, mentally and emotionally. I would say primarily emotionally. I think that's where most of it really is. And then all of a sudden, the symptoms just like one day they're like gone, or one day they just notice how much their symptoms have gone down, or maybe it's not. Very often we don't realize, right? When you take a person has a headache and they take Tylenol or Advil, 10 minutes later it's like, I still have a headache. People don't usually notice, the headache went away, like in that moment. It's like, the headache's gone. I wonder when that happened, right? So mental, emotional, physical health and spiritual health, they are deeply intertwined, because in terms of us, I wouldn't say it's on a continuum. I wouldn't say our body and our soul, etc., are on a continuum, our consciousness, but they do become one composite entity. Right? You can't separate a person's body from a person's soul as long as they're a person. Every thought involves the body and the soul. You can measure it in the brain, and it involves the soul. Without either one, it wouldn't happen. Every sensation, every emotion, everything involves the body, the consciousness, the soul. They're inherently intertwined as a composite entity. So these people who needed more development, let's say, they got work and journey built into their meal. Every day they had to work, they had to walk. And the more progress and development they needed, the longer the journey they had to walk on to get them on. The more work they had to put in to prepare it. Work produces growth and development journey. So those people, let's say in a sense, were the people who needed the spiritual gift of the man the most. We could say in a sense that they deserved it the least. They also needed it the most. And both things are taken care of together, because the fact that they got the necessary work and journey built in also means that they were getting something more difficult. So they got what they deserved, they got what they needed. It goes hand in hand in this instance. All of them, everyone, regardless of how far they had to journey, wherever they were up to, all of them got 100% pure nutrition, because that's the point of the mon. The point of the mon was to provide 100% pure divine nutrition, and they all got it. Some people needed a lot of growth and development, so they got a journey built in, but it doesn't mean that they got less nourishment from the mon. They got more, or they got the same, and the impact was bigger, because the movement that showed over the course of their lives, over the course of their time eating them on, ended up being much bigger. They went from one extreme to another, as opposed to someone who was already here and then they just went like that. And there's a similar, I just want to say one more side note here before we move on, that again, this just occurred to me in real time as I was describing that. Is that really the mon here, and this the the composite and the confluence here of the fact that everyone got what they needed, and the people who at face value, maybe we would say they deserved less, I think it's fair to say that it's not really about what they deserved, it's about what was right for them and what they needed. They didn't get any less nutrition from the man just because their behavior was worse. On the contrary, they needed that extra nutrition more. Would it make sense to give them less? It makes sense to build in some work and a journey into their progress, into their way to get it, because these are people who have a lot of development that they need to do. But it doesn't make sense to get the person who's worse off, giving them less. It's like it's such an absurd notion. And once you get that and you understand that, there's so much about the way that society broadly, at least, let's say in the West, I don't know about elsewhere, but looks at things in this mentality that, when a kid steps out of line, you need to punish them and you need to withdraw from them. And it's like, do you think that anybody wants to not be functional and not excel? The notion is absurd. Now, it can seem like that at face value. It can seem like this person just doesn't care, this person doesn't want to do well. There's no such thing as a person who doesn't want to do well. Everybody wants to succeed. Everybody wants to be in a good place. Some people, for whatever reason or combination of reasons, the things that they're exposed to, the things that they've learned, the ways that they've been hurt, etc., all of the above, they're stuck in a pattern of behavior or whatever it is where they can't stop hurting themselves further. So what we do is punish them and withdraw. Hurt them more and hurt them more again. That's definitely going to help. The person who at face value is deserving of the least connection and etc. is the person who desperately needs it the most. That's the way it goes. That's why their behavior is like this. This is true of children and it's true of adults. Adults are just children with more years on at the end of the day. All people, and yes, we've had time to develop more and to learn more things, but yeah, I'll leave it at that. Right? And this whole approach that if someone is behaving badly, we should punish them and push them away and make things more painful for them. It's like, in what reality do you think that's going to help? It can be very difficult and take a lot of work to reframe, to be able to, especially when we've been wired so deeply that behaving in an undesirable way deserves punishment. And when that's something that's been wired in over generations and generations and however long, it could take a lot of work to get to the point where we can reframe and look at things. And when someone is behaving in a way that is, let's say, very inappropriate, undesirable, not ideal, bad, to be able to look at it and to see this person is so in so much pain, is so stuck, that they're just not able to behave in a way that serves them. That person really needs support. That person really needs connection. That person really needs attachment. The person who we often at face value will naturally tend to pull away from and to want to punish. And what is punishment? Punishment is mostly, officially it's not, but the reality of punishment, when someone's like, oh yeah, give them a punishment, that is anger. That is a desire to hurt someone. That's what that is. When a person's like, yeah, give them the punishment. Why? Because they deserve it. If you think someone deserves something, you wouldn't get worked up and angry and like, yeah, give them the punishment. Yeah, give them the punishment is coming really from a place of saying, I want to hurt this person. I want to get them back. I want revenge. I want payback. Is hurting someone more going to help? I'm not saying there's never a place for creating very strong boundaries, and sometimes people, for the protection of other people, have to be separated. Sometimes it's a necessity. I think that the overwhelming majority of the time, it's just a completely broken approach. All right, and here we see in the Mon, yes, the people who needed more progress and work and development, they had to journey to get it, Because they did need a journey, they did need work, they did need progress, they did need movement. But it doesn't mean we give them less divinity, that we give them less nutrition, we give them less nourishment. What an absurd way to approach like giving people their needs. No, those people needed the nourishment the most. And over an extended period of time. Now, that, granted, that could be very, very, very difficult to not feel pushed away when someone's behaving in a way that naturally makes us feel resistance or distance and separation. That's where the work is. If I care about this person, can I do what I have to do so that when they behave in a way that naturally makes me feel like I want to distance myself, and in that moment is exactly because they're expressing their pain, they're expressing their stuckness, they're expressing their dysfunction, that moment is the moment when they need the connection and the support the most, can I do what's necessary so that despite, not that I don't feel pushed away, because maybe we might not get there, or we might get there, maybe we're not there yet, maybe we'll never get there. But even though I feel a sense of being pushed away, can I hold that and also look at things with a deeper perspective and see, okay, you know what, that really hurt, and there's a big part of me right now that wants to pull away and separate, but this person desperately needs support, connection right now. That's why this is happening. And the more that I can give that to them and show that to them, over time, their body will start to be able to feel trust, will be able to start to feel safe and to feel like there is reliable connection and they don't have to push and fight and protect themselves, etc. It's a process that takes time, like all of these things, like we were talking earlier. It can take a lot of work and a persistent commitment, but that is the realest and truest approach. Now, in general, food is a metaphor for Torah in a number of ways. Just broadly speaking, Torah, the same way that food, what is food? It's a source of, let's say, nutrition, construction materials, and nutrients and energy. Right? We eat, we get the molecules that our bodies need for construction of new tissue in the body, new cells, whatever it is, repair. We get the source of fuel, of energy, calories, and whatever micronutrients and minerals and vitamins we need to be able to run things properly and efficiently if we're eating the right food. Torah does the same thing for the soul. Torah is nutrition for the soul. It gives the soul strength. A person cannot, there's no reality in which I'm just like, okay, I'm good, spiritually I'm good, I'm going to go through life, I'm going to daven every day, I'm going to go do my mitzvahs, I'm going to live my life, I'm not going to study Torah anymore. There's no reality in which my spiritual state doesn't relatively quickly start to go whoop. And it's certainly not going to improve. Now, yes, the davening and the work and all of those things are extremely important parts of the picture. But the Torah provides the nutrition, the energy, the construction materials for the soul to get stronger and deeper, and for that connection to get deeper and stronger with Hashem. Excuse me. And the Zohar talks about Torah. It says that the Torah has a body and a soul. And in a sense, that body and soul, the same way that the soul has a purity and a cleanness and a lack of, let's say, complexity of sorts, and it's not so complicated and high maintenance like the body is in certain ways. The same is true of bread and man. Bread took a lot of work to prepare. Takes a lot of work to prepare always any food. There's a lot of waste. There's a lot of processing. The body has to, do a lot of work to process and to release nutrients, etc. As opposed to man, it was pure nutrition, 100% efficient. In Torah, there's the body and the soul of Torah is also like the bread and the man of Torah. So there's the the bulk of Torah and what is supposed to be the bulk of our Torah study, which is halacha, chumash, Gemara, what's referred to generally as nigla, as the revealed parts of Torah. And then there is what Zohar refers to as Nishma D'Oraisa, the soul of Torah, or we could look at it as the man. If Torah is food, there's the regular food, and then there's the man. That's pure nutrition. There's no waste, and everybody can absorb it equally, clearly, efficiently, and perfectly. When it comes to physical food, even a very nutritious food might not work for some people because they're not in a position to get from it. The man was 100% pure nutrition for everyone regardless. Pnimius HaTorah, the soul of Torah, the mysticism, the chassidus, will inevitably have an effect of 100% pure, efficient, unadulterated nutrition, and there is no one, it doesn't matter how messed up a person is, let's say figuratively, it doesn't matter how leaky someone's gut was and how many food intolerances they have, and and all the things, and they were missing their gallbladder and you name it, and their insulin was completely, they were insulin resistant. All the things, they ate man, perfect, beautiful. It didn't depend on any of those things. Chassidus, and everybody got pure nutrition. It doesn't matter how, let's say spiritually, we have leaky gut and intolerances and all the things, and insulin resistance, it doesn't matter. Chassidus is like the man. It will come in. It's like the man, not necessarily you ate the man, boom, you were there. No. It takes time. It's going to fuel and support and push a process. The process still takes time. There's no way around that. Same thing, learning Chassidus will give pure nutrition to the soul, and there is no person, zero people who are in a position where they are not, I'm not ready for that. My body can't handle that. My soul can't absorb that. No. This is man we're talking about, not bread. A lot of people can't eat bread. A lot of people can't eat all kinds of things. Not man. Everybody can eat man. Everybody gets pure, perfect nutrition from man. The man of Torah is Chassidus, is Pnimius HaTorah, what Zohar calls Nishmas D'Oraisa, the soul of Torah. It doesn't matter, right? The same way with man, the person who needed the most progress, one might think, well, that person can't really get man. That person's not going to be able to get the benefits. It's like, no. That would be such a close-minded and punitive and broken way of looking at it. That person needs it the most. Of course they're going to get it. Yes, but they're going to have a journey because they do need a journey. But when they eat the man, they're getting the 100% pure nutrition, and it's going to help them get where they need to go. Chassidus is the same thing. There's no such thing as a person who's so far away, so whatever it is, that they're not ready for Chassidus. No. That person needs the Chassidus the most out of everybody. And it's going to land, and it's going to be pure, efficient nutrition, just like the man.